To family. This is giving you something to talk about, or just alive, as I like to call it. Today, we're going to be talking about no means no, and what an episode that is. Today's sponsor is a Phoenix Identity. Take back control of your life by first taking back control of your emotions. Heavy emotions, trauma, stress, and struggles can weigh heavily on you and make you feel like there's no way out. Learn how to control your emotions so they're no longer controlling you. Grab that guide, the Embrace Your Positivity, Introducing the ROCKSTAR Method, link in the description. If at any time you want to get involved, please feel free to comment, get involved in the conversation. Currently, we are live. If you're watching the replay, still feel free to comment as we go. I'm going to hand it over to our guest speaker to introduce themselves. Priya, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Melissa. Good day to everyone. I am Priya S Raman. I'm a practicing spiritual life coach, holistic and mental health wellness practitioner. And I'm also into many charity and social work, which is a part of my back in India and in Canada. So I'm also the founder of Break the Silence. We work towards rape prevention, sexual violence, and raising awareness on suicide and depression.
I absolutely love that. And you know what? The last few weeks of the show, we have really been doing a lot of episodes on mental health and suicide, and just the thought process behind it, what creates it, how we can help those that we love involved in it. So today, while we may touch on, so I'm just moving my chair back, while we touch on suicide prevention and what that is, I really want to focus on, of course, the sexual assault aspect of what we're talking about. Now, when we talk about no means no, for anybody watching, absolutely, no in any scenario means no. Whether you are asked if you want to go out for coffee, whether you're asked if you want to help somebody move or explain yourself, no, obviously in any situation means no. Now, there are ways around that where we can, give people the opportunity to, if it's somebody that we love or we care about and we're saying no, we might give an explanation. But no absolutely means no. But for the rest of this episode, I think we're going to focus on no means no in power struggles. And I think sexual assault is a power struggle, and something that a lot of not just women but men face.
True. So true. It is prevalent. The first, when we talk about sexual violence or rape, most predominantly the affected members are women. But yes, there are men who go through it right from their entering into the adolescent or being a minor, or even we have heard LGBTQ communities, the queer community, where they also go through either in once, and if you ask all of these people, basically all the gender, so one in their lifetime once they must have gone through any kind of sexual abuse or violence or even rape, so the attempted rape. So most probably it's the women and girls, young girls, what we see in the whole world, where they undergo predominantly. That's more prevalent.
Yeah. So I'd like to touch on what society and culture and generational teachings. So I grew up in a what's the word I'm looking for? A generation where, if you went and you saw Aunt Ida and Aunt Ida wanted to give you a hug or a kiss, you were forced to. You know what I mean? Even if Aunt Ida or Uncle Stan or whoever was a little bit creepy and you were just like, I really don't want to. As kids, we were forced to, right? Be nice, be respectful, respect your elders. If you don't look somebody in the eyes, it's a sign of disrespect. I think that we've taught children, even ourselves, that not giving somebody a hug or not giving somebody a kiss or not allowing them to invade our bubble is a sign of disrespect. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. In those days, even in olden times, the abuse, the sexual violence, it was there, it was prevalent, but it wasn't talked about. It wasn't, there was no exposure. And women, they were always looked down upon. Like the power struggle, what you rightly put it as, it's more of a men, it was more of a sexual prowess that you actually take control of. And they always see women, the other opposite sex, as the one who's not dominant, who's very, under your control, to instill fear, to have that control power struggle, what you said, the power control, the sexual prowess, to prove something. And you don't see them as a human being. So you objectify them. So it's more to do with the gender as an objectification, what we see these days, rather than treat them as a human, rather than treat them in humanity. So in those days, it was not spoken about. And now it's still there. It is the fear is still there, victim blaming, victim shaming, everything's to do with. So when we see there are many countries, even now, worldwide, rape is not being reported. The sexual violence, it doesn't get reported. So which means we don't have specific data. Even the World Health Organization, what they give it out or release is, there are certain countries, only few of the topmost countries, who actually have those laws in place where people they report. So those are the countries, but still it goes unnoticed because of the fear and because of the victim shaming. So we always see once the act has been there, when a person, when a woman or a girl or a man, for that sake, if you go for reporting, what we as a society, we always see is, oh, what he was doing at that point in time, what she was wearing, what she was wearing, what she was doing at that point in time. So, oh, was she alone? So we focus more on the victim blaming, so the game of victim blaming starts. Instead, if we stand up towards why did he do that? So we're talking men as a very specific then, because that's the most prevalent, predominant thing. But the opposite sex, whoever the perpetrator of the crime, so we don't question them. So our entire focus is always on or even after the act of crime, it is a serious crime. It is a punishable offense. And it is to do with a lot more when a person goes through it, when he or she faces in their lifetime, it takes a toll on their mental health. Mm-hmm. So many survivors, they attempt suicide. They slip into depression. Or even if they want to fight it out, they want to come up in their life beyond that, there's always the societal stigma attached to it.
Yeah. And that's absolutely sad. Nobody chooses to be a victim. True. Right? Yes, there are circumstances, there's decisions that we make that maybe put ourselves in the line of danger. But if you told, if somebody signed up for the army, right? Are you going to say, oh, well, they signed up for it, they died. Oh, they signed up for it. What are you supposed to do? No, right? It's still a tragedy. It's still violence. It's still death. It's still something that's traumatic, regardless of what decisions put you in what situation. You go on a date with somebody off of Tinder and, something happens and you don't want it to happen. That's rape, right? I had a lady tell me once that she was in a situation where she was a teen and Somebody had come up to her. It was a friend of somebody who was harming her. And she ended up, agreeing to do something with this gentleman because he threatened her.
Okay.
Right? And she took that as a very she internalized that, and she hated herself because she agreed to it. And I said, honey, that's rape though. He forced you to do that and to make that decision on threat of physical violence, right? You don't have to have a knife held to your throat to be raped. You don't have to have a gun pointed at your head to be raped. Somebody, if somebody tells you do this or this is going to happen, that's a threat. That is a threat of violence.
Hence, we're talking about no. So often it is always, they don't want to take no for an answer. It indirectly for them, it is, oh yeah, I thought, I felt, she said yes. He or she said yes. Even no word, no communication, when, as you said rightly, it was imposed, like an indirect threat or a direct threat, it could be. So they just see it as an indirect yes. So they don't want to consider no for an answer. And if you go back where it is coming from and what is the cause, predominantly it's more to do with there is no emotional intelligence. There is no emotional quotient. What we've been taught in schools or from our younger age, or we as parents, I'm also a parent of a teenager, an adult youth. So what we see is there is no sex education, which is we don't talk about things. We don't talk about the human body as it is to be spoken about. You just see that as you have certain body. Then we talk about body shaming, where it comes from. So we don't acknowledge our body parts. At the same time, what is being, there's so much stigma and taboo around these concepts. Even sex education, when we talk about in the schools as early when they have to talk about, so we as a society, teachers, educators, philanthropists, or the people around you, and you're doing a great work, like bringing this up, like the talk shows, influencers, social media activists, and many people we have a collective responsibility to bring it up, to end or talk more about it, create that awareness. Only then we will be able to stop or end or prevent as much as we can. So emotional quotient, we have to focus on that, because this is not taught in school, or it is not included in the school curriculum. Or so now it is taking more of an advantage, like where we are stressing, there are people who are focusing more of these works in their areas. So where I have worked with juvenile delinquents in the prison back in India. So my core case was to do with rape accused, or the delinquents, the perpetrators of sexual violence. So you see the academic intelligence, or the where it is the what is the difference? What is lacking here is that there was a case. There was a boy who was into teenager. So he was accused of committing a rape attempt or the sexual assault with a toddler, a neighbor child. So he was. But if you look at his background, he is coming from a very marginalized, low-income group. His mother is into housekeeping, things like that. But he was doing very well in his studies. He was academically sound. So it does not have to be only if you're academically poor. It just does not end there. So even if you are, even if you, it happens in these higher class too. Even if you are so what we are trying to focus here is that how do you take out or channelize your emotions? It doesn't have to be, we've been not taught about it, especially the young boys as they grow up, when they become aggressive. So what is right in front of you, you objectify a girl, a woman, irrespective of their age. It is right in front of you. So
There,
you just take it out on them.
yep. There is, and I've spoken about this numerous times over the last few years, where any sort of assault, so sexual assault, domestic violence, physical assault, any type of assault, you look at, and I'm going to specifically talk about men and some women as well. So men are taught that they have to be very masculine, they have to be very manly, aggressive. They're not allowed to have emotions. So imagine anybody watching or catching the replay. Imagine that you are somebody who has no control over your emotions. You feel like you have no control over your life. And when you have no emotional control, that messes with everything else. There are 7 major aspects of our life. There is our self, our spirituality, our relationships, our romantic relationships, our family, our friends, our finances, and our career. Those 7 pillars, as I call them, are created by like all of these beliefs. But if you aren't, like, if you have no self-preservation, if you have no self-control, and you turn around and you get angry or you get aggressive or you feel out of control, everything starts to feel out of control. Your relationships are out of control. Your career is out of control. Your family's out of control. Everything becomes out of control. And you desperately want to find something that you feel in control of.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is people who feel out of control and are desperate for power will find someone or something that they can control that isn't as powerful. And then that's where you get the violence. That's where you get domestic violence. That's where you get sexual assaults. That's where you get a lot of these things. And I'm not giving them an outlet for it. I'm really not, because any violence at all, any violence or assault at all is obviously wrong. But there is a mental and emotional reason for it, right? And when you find something that brings you that level of control, where you feel in control of your emotions, in control of your body, and in control of your environment, that will create the sexual assault, repeat sexual assaults, repeat domestic violence, repeat just assaults in general, right? And people don't realize that correlation, that it's to gain control.
So true. And so that's the this is where the more awareness talks and sessions has to happen, where we have to bring it at the very early age, where how do you handle them? How do you handle your emotions? How do you label your emotions? If there are no healthy ways, if it is not taught to a child or as you grow up, so that's where it begins. So if you are not able to channelize it in a healthy way, so we're talking about all these kinds of different types of assault or any kind of crime. That's what happens. I mean, it's not to do with only the sexual assault or any assault, what we're talking about, in general, any crime.
Yeah.
So you take it out. So, and sexual prowess is what, it is so prevalent. And it is to do with a human body. So that takes a toll throughout your lifetime. If there is a rape survivor or a sexual violence survivor, what kind of mental trauma that the person goes throughout their life, it doesn't end. So depression, or even if you just want to fight it out and go ahead with your life, still there will be stigma. People talk about it. They will keep again and again bring it up. That is what he or she is afraid about. So the most often in many countries, even still now, it goes unreported. So there is no report because victim shaming. They will not get they will not get into probably good opportunities. They cannot climb up their career or pursue their higher education or anything because there's always a label. There's always a stigma attached to that person. Oh, okay, he or she. So the more I talk about it, I'm going to be called upon.
Yeah.
Different names. So we as a society have this responsibility to stop that stigma.
Yep.
So
So
it's going to continue.
For anybody watching or catching the replay, as you can tell from this conversation, learning how to control your emotions is really that starting point, right? When you learn how to control your emotions, that's when you can start working on your mental health. That's when you can start changing your behaviors and your patterns and, all of these things. So whether you're a victim of sexual trauma or any trauma at all, if you have been victimized, if you are living in depression, anxiety, fear, stereotypes and stigmas, you need to learn how to control your emotions. When you control your emotions, then you can go, who am I? Right? What do I believe in? How do I feel? What would I like to create or accomplish? And then you can start making those changes and start living authentically as yourself, not as the victimized version of yourself. So going back to no means no. I think there's a couple things that I wanted to mention along the lines of the Me Too movement. So I started this episode off talking about, Aunt Ida and Uncle Stan who want a hug or a kiss, and mom says, oh, you have to give them a hug or a kiss or it's disrespectful. There is a difference, right? If you go to work, and I've seen this happen where somebody will go to work and they get a pat on the back, right? And they call that sexual harassment. And I'm like, it's a pat on the back. If you don't want somebody touching you in your bubble, no matter head to toe, then you need to vocalize that, right?
Yes.
But knowing the difference of sexual assault and sexual violence or sexual harassment, and just being able to say, hey, you know what? I don't really like to be touched. Can you not, right? And that's your way of saying, hey, no, like I'm not comfortable with that. You should be able to say no to anything that you're not comfortable with or anything that doesn't work for you or resonate for you. I have I have 4 kids, and not all of them like to be touched, right? I can only give one of my middle children a hug when they want it. And I'm totally fine with that, right? Because I respect their boundaries. My oldest daughter will come up to me and go, Mom, can I have a hug? And I'm like, no, bubble. I'm in a bubble mood. You need to not touch my bubble. And they respect that, right? So I'm teaching them healthy boundaries and being able to say no, right? And knowing that, the things that happened generations ago, shaking somebody's hand, direct eye contact, the pat on the back, giving your aunts or uncles or grandparents hugs and kisses. We need to move away from those things and not force other people to engage in what they're not comfortable in.
All the more, another important point is failures. So what we teach them during this course is take no for an answer. That's also a failure. So you're not being taught to take no for an answer. So what ultimately ends up in, okay, how can you say no? So there comes the power struggle and the sexual prowess that we actually take upon, and on that particular person, the opposite sex, girl or women or man, or even minor young boys, they also go through it. So it's more to do with, okay, be communicative, be vocal about it. What are your desires? What are your intentions? What is your thought process? And the opposite sex, mostly women or men, the boys, the young boys, adolescents, youth, teens, teenagers. So, what we have to tell them or teach them is, apart from the sex education, is to handle that failure, that failed emotion. How do you handle that? How do you channelize that? It's okay if you failed in anything. If you okay, if it's okay, you take no for an answer, it is okay. So how we are normalizing these words are very, very crucial and important. The more we normalize the communication, takes a very important role in schools or in social settings or wherever the gatherings or through blog posts, social media. People are on social media, so make use of that, any kind of platform, through podcast or video channels. Talk more about it. Only then we can bring up or bring a change in the upcoming generations, where they are taught to actually see the other person as a human being rather than objectify.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we get going?
I think I've shared my viewpoints. So it's we have a responsibility. All of us have a responsibility to not wait for somebody else to. Every household has either a girl or a boy. So whatever changes, if it's a girl or a boy, just try and talk more about the sex education, bring in the topic of emotional intelligence or handling failures. So all of these are a very important takeaway from the today's session. So that's an appeal from my end. We are walking towards a Breaks the Silence spot. We are walking in towards this cause, prevention of suicide and rape or mental health and depression. So it all has to start somewhere. So the starting point here would be handling your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the root cause.
Yep. And to do that, you can use the ROCKSTAR method. My ROCKSTAR method, which is our sponsor's ROCKSTAR method, is learning how to embrace every emotion you have and learning how to control them and remove their weight. So go and check that out, link in the description. If you want to get in touch with Priya about Break the Silence or to learn more about what she does, please feel free to drop in the description and click those links. If you would like to join me on my journey, please feel free. My links are in the description as well. All right. For anybody watching or catching the replay, if you'd like to be a guest speaker, guest blogger, guest sponsor, or if you would like to see a topic featured on this show, please make sure that you reach out to us at gystalivetv.com. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on when or where you're watching. Priya, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
All right.
Farewell.
So that is the show. I hope you all, again, have a wonderful afternoon, morning, or evening. I'm your host, Melissa Krechler. I will see all of you on the next episode. Bye.